For over 800 years, one person has ruled the world from the shadows. They've erased entire kingdoms, started countless wars, silenced anyone who learned too much, and even wiped entire islands off the map without a second thought. But here's the question almost nobody has asked. How many deaths is Emu actually responsible for? By the end of this video, we're going to estimate that number using everything Oda has revealed so far. And trust me, it might be far higher than you think. Lulusia Kingdom. The easiest place to start is the only event where we actually witnessed Emu's power in action, the Kingdom of Lulusia. After Sabo escaped Mary Joaz, he accidentally learned about Emu's existence. That single mistake sealed the kingdom's fate. Moments later, mysterious beams of light rained down from the sky and erased the entire island from existence. Not destroyed, erased. The world government even altered history, claiming Lulusia had never existed in the first place. The exact population of Lulusia has never been confirmed, but one-piece kingdoms are usually home to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of citizens. Dressrosa alone had a massive population, and Alabasta was said to have around 10 million people. Even if Lulusia was much smaller, we're still talking about hundreds of thousands of innocent people disappearing in a matter of seconds. The scary part isn't the number itself. It's how casually Emu made the decision. There was no hesitation, no debate. An entire nation vanished simply because one person happened to be there. And if Emu has ruled the world for around 800 years, what are the chances Lulusia was the first time? The Void Century. This is where the numbers become almost impossible to imagine. 800 years ago, the 20 kingdoms defeated the ancient kingdom and created the world government. But according to everything we've learned from Ohara, Vegapunk, and the Poneglyphs, that victory wasn't simply the end of a war. It was the beginning of the greatest cover-up in history. The ancient kingdom wasn't just defeated, it was completely erased. Its technology disappeared. Its history disappeared. Even researching it became punishable by death. Oda has never told us how many people lived there, but considering how advanced the civilization was, it's reasonable to assume millions of people may have been involved, whether through the war itself or the destruction that followed. And the killing didn't stop after the Void Century ended. Every generation that got too close to the truth paid the price. The scholars of Ohara were wiped out simply for studying history. Countless researchers disappeared over the centuries. Entire bloodlines were hunted because they carried knowledge the government wanted buried forever. The more you think about it, the more obvious it becomes. Emu doesn't just eliminate enemies. Emu eliminates history itself, and that's a completely different level of evil. Government wars. Lulusia and the Void Century are only the beginning, because Emu doesn't need to destroy islands personally to be responsible for millions of deaths. Think about how the world government has operated for the last 800 years. They control over 170 nations, collect taxes from kingdoms across the world, and maintain their power through fear. Whenever a country refuses to obey, war almost always follows. Even if Emu never directly gives every order, the entire system exists because of one person sitting on the empty throne. Take Dressrosa as an example. Doflamingo ruled the country because the world government allowed him to keep his warlord title despite knowing exactly who he was. Or look at the countless civil wars caused by corrupt kings backed by the government. Every conflict created thousands of deaths, and every one of those kingdoms ultimately answered to the same organization. That's why Emu's death count isn't limited to the people personally erased from existence. It includes everyone who died because the system itself was designed to protect the people at the very top. This is where the number starts becoming terrifying. Even if just one major conflict happened every few years over an 800-year period, we're already talking about hundreds of wars across history. Some would claim thousands of lives. Others could easily reach hundreds of thousands. Before we've even reached the modern era, Emu's indirect death count is already climbing into the millions. Slavery. If there's one crime the world government has never tried to hide, it's slavery. Every celestial dragon owns slaves. Every year, new people are captured and taken to Mary Joaz. Some die from exhaustion. Others are executed for entertainment. Many simply disappear without anyone ever learning their names. God Valley proves how little human life means to the people ruling the world. The celestial dragons literally organized a human hunting competition where innocent slaves were chased for sport. Children, families, entire groups of people were treated like animals. And the most disturbing part is that this wasn't presented as a unique event. It was simply another tradition of the world nobles. Now imagine that mindset continuing for centuries. 800 years of slavery, 800 years of executions, 800 years of people dying simply because they were born into the wrong family or happened to stand in the wrong place. We obviously can't calculate an exact number, but even using the most conservative estimate possible, the victims would almost certainly number in the millions. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, because the content is only getting crazier. Buster calls. Then, there are the Buster calls. Most fans only think about O'Hara and Enies Lobby, but the existence of the Buster Call tells us something much darker. The world government created an entire military operation whose sole purpose is to completely erase islands from existence. If O'Hara received one, who's to say it was the only island ever destroyed that way? The scholars of O'Hara weren't pirates. They weren't revolutionaries. They were historians trying to understand the void century. Men, women, and children died because they asked the wrong questions. Robin survived by pure luck, but everyone else disappeared in flames. If similar incidents happened throughout history, and it's hard to believe they didn't, that adds another massive number of innocent victims directly tied to the government's obsession with hiding the truth. By this point, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Lulusia wasn't the exception. It was simply the first time Oda allowed us to witness what had probably been happening for centuries. Direct victims versus indirect victims. At this point, we need to separate Imu's victims into two categories. The first is direct victims, people who died because Imu personally gave the order. Lulusia is the perfect example. The island wasn't destroyed by pirates or marines. It was erased because Imu decided it should disappear. The same likely applies to many kingdoms lost during the Void Century, and any nation completely wiped from history. The second category is much larger: indirect victims. These are the people who died because of the system Imu created and continues to protect. Every Buster Call, every slave who died under the celestial dragons, every innocent person killed during government-backed wars, every scholar executed for learning forbidden history, every revolutionary hunted down by Cypher Pole. Even if Imu never met these people, the system responsible for their deaths has existed for 800 years under one ruler. This is why calculating Imu's death count is so difficult. Most villains only kill with their own hands. Imu doesn't need to. Entire organizations, armies, and kingdoms do it instead. The final estimate. So, what number are we actually looking at? Let's stay as conservative as possible.
Nani?
Lulusia alone could easily account for hundreds of thousands, possibly over 1 million deaths. The Ancient Kingdom and the Void Century likely claimed millions more during the largest war in history. 800 years of slavery, government purges, Buster Calls, political assassinations, public executions, and wars between affiliated nations would continue adding victims generation after generation. Even if we assume the world government was responsible for only 150,000 deaths every single year over 800 years, a surprisingly low estimate considering it rules over more than 170 nations, that already equals 120 million deaths. And honestly, that number may still be too low. One major war, one erased kingdom, or one event like Lulusia could increase the total by millions in a single day. That's arguably the cruelest form of evil in all of One Piece. If Luffy defeats Kaido, people celebrate. If Luffy defeats Doflamingo, Dressrosa is freed. But if Luffy defeats Imu, he won't just be defeating the strongest enemy in the series. He'll be ending 800 years of fear. And if our estimate is even remotely accurate, then Emu isn't just the deadliest character in One Piece. Emu may be responsible for well over 100 million deaths, making them, by far, the biggest killer Oda has ever created.